headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. The Spanish government has said that it will not allow Venezuelan opposition figure Leopoldo Lopez to carry out political activities from its embassy in Caracas. Lopez took refuge in the Spanish embassy on Tuesday after escaping house arrest and taking part in a failed coup attempt. Spain's Foreign Minister Josep Borrell was speaking on a visit to Lebanon.
Spain will not permit its embassy to be converted into a center of political activity. We also are confident that under these conditions, Venezuela will respect the diplomatic immunity of the Spanish embassy.
Tensions have increased at Venezuela's embassy in Washington, D.C., where activists continue to defend Venezuela's diplomatic offices from being taken over by members of the opposition. Our correspondent Alina Duarte has the latest details.
Tensions have escalated in Venezuela's embassy in Washington, D.C.
They have physically assaulted the peaceful activists. They have been hurling verbal abuse since 5 o'clock yesterday. They have done destruction to the building. And unfortunately, the Secret Service police, as well as the Metropolitan Police, have been standing by and not doing anything about it.
After the Embassy Defense Collective gave a press conference, activists tried to get food and medicine into the building, but members of the Venezuelan opposition reportedly prevented them from getting the supplies.
Get out of here, you communists! Go to the hole!
We're here to bring food and medicine inside. The Secret Service is not preventing the opposition from presenting people getting inside. The opposition has been very violent, very aggressive in blocking people from getting in and out, and the Secret Service is not protecting.
There is still a possibility that the Venezuelan opposition will succeed on taking over the embassy building. They have already taken 3 other diplomatic offices in Washington and New York.
Right-wing mob has been doing here is completely illegal, and not only is it illegal, but the Secret Service, the federal police agencies, and the local police agencies are standing by, watching it happen, taking no action to stop these illegal assaults, the physical violence against the building, the physical violence against people. They're facilitating this, and we've sent a letter to the director of the U.S. Secret Service, to the chief of the D.C. Police Department, telling them that we're going to take action to hold them accountable for violation of civil rights.
In the afternoon, the atmosphere remained tense, but those arrested in the morning were released. Following the failed attempt coup in Venezuela, U.S. President Donald Trump wished the best to the people of the Latin American country and said he is on their side. But President Trump failed to mention that the economic sanctions his administration has imposed on the country have had hard consequences. According to the Center of Economic and Political Research, the sanctions have negatively impacted the lives of at least 40,000 Venezuelans.
Alina Duarte, Telesur, Washington, D.C. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, has called on CARICOM leaders to ensure the continued security and stability of the region in light of the situation in Venezuela. Dr. Rowley, who's the chairman of the Security Council for CARICOM and law enforcement, made the statement at the opening of the 19th special meeting of the Conference of CARICOM Heads of Government underway in Trinidad. CARICOM leaders have maintained a stance of non-interference and have said a peaceful solution to the situation in Venezuela is their foremost priority. Meanwhile, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines says that they stand ready to assist Venezuela in light of recent events, calling them disturbing. In a statement, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves reaffirmed his country's commitment to upholding the UN Charter principles of respect for sovereignty, the rule of law, non-intervention, and non-interference. He further condemned all forms of violence and urged all parties involved to desist from acts which aim to destabilize the country. Colombia's lower house has approved the national development plan proposed by the government of Iván Duque. The plan touches on issues including education, jobs, security, and environment, and is expected to be debated in the Senate on Tuesday. Part of the plan includes a commitment by the government to fulfill its promises to campesinos and indigenous people regarding land ownership. With this plan, President Duque says he expects to lift 3.4 million people out of poverty. Our correspondent in Bogota, Tatiana Portela, explains.
On Thursday, something very unusual happened. Normally, there is some coordination between the two houses of Congress. Both the Senate and the lower house pass laws, but there is a process of conciliation between the two. But yesterday, the plenary of the lower house approved the National Development Plan, but with some new articles added, which will only be read in the Senate next Tuesday. So in effect, the Senate has to vote on a law that the lower house had passed, but which the Senate hadn't even seen in its final version. More than 300 articles were approved, with the most delicate ones being the articles referring to fracking activities now allowed in the country, despite the fact that environmental activists and social leaders have opposed this. Another article that caused controversy was the one referring to the pension reform and the funds allocated to rural areas. The National Development Plan will also allow the increase of the electric service. We are waiting to hear what will be the next actions of opposition members to fight this plan.
That was Tatiana Portela in Bogota. Bolivian President Evo Morales has enacted a new law which aims to create a quicker and more transparent judicial system. Via social media, Bolivian Justice Minister Hector Arce said that it will take effect in 150 days. The goal is to resolve penal cases in a shorter time period, to reduce preventative arrest numbers, and to create better conditions for inmates. It also includes special protection measures for children, teenagers, and women. An Ecuadorian court has rejected the appeal of Swedish national Ola Bini and will remain in pretrial detention. He's accused of an alleged cyber attack and of collaborating with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Bini's lawyer requested his pretrial detention be annulled so that he can defend himself freely. But one of the judges said that there's a risk of Bini interfering with the investigation if he's released due to his expertise in computing.
We cannot allow Ecuador to present itself like that, as a country that persecutes people for the books they read, for the technology they have, or simply because they have a friend who everyone rejects now, after thanking him in the past for showing to the whole world the atrocities that were committed in other sectors of the world.
Panama's agricultural sector is one of the most affected by current policies, as a wave of commercial treaties are causing a decline in productivity. However, few presidential candidates are offering feasible solutions for this problem ahead of the election on May 5th.
Panama's agro-industry isn't at its best time. A wave of importations, especially during harvest season, has led to a reduction in productivity of the land, something that puts the country agro-industry at risk.
This is a result of the irresponsibility of the government that has failed to take care of what is happening. So I think that there should be a state policy towards the agro-industry that is decreasing at a rate of 60%.
The amount of food imported into the country amounts to $1,043 million, more than the $1,030 million that the Panama Canal contributes annually. On high-consumption products like rice, in 2017, the government imported about 3 million quintals and plans to import more than 3,000 quintals this year. In the case of other products like onion, the imports exceeded the 360,000 quintals in 2017. That same year, 4,494 quintals of tomatoes were imported and a similar amount in other items. Most of the imports are provided by the Panamanian Food Security Authorities, an entity created in the framework of use with the U.S. benefiting the importing elite.
The basis of their power is to extract the utility of international services and speculate with them on the economy. One of the main forms of speculation with them is the import of food, and it's the speculation with land and housing, so they can support the agro-industry without infringing against their own interests.
Out of the 7 candidates for president, only the Alternative of Social Movements is the one that proposes not only the elimination of the entity, but the suspension of all the free trade agreements.
For what? To assure our producers and the people that what we are going to eat are healthy products produced in Panama, with Panamanian labor to sell it in Panama on a fair price for the whole population.
Experts predict that without quick measures that address the sector, sovereignty and food security are at risk. The national production could even be lost in its entirety.
Our correspondent in Panama City, Hugo Vera, has more on the campaign.
On Thursday, presidential candidates wrapped up their electoral campaigns ahead of Sunday's electoral election. Now citizens have to decide who to pick to be the country's new president, vice president, and to fill their seats in Congress. More than 2.7 million people are eligible to vote in Panama. It was a very short campaign. It only lasted for a month. Many people questioned just how much the government spent on campaigning, especially how much subsidies the various political parties received and spent in the end. There are 7 presidential candidates. From them, 4 are representatives of political parties. People are also electing leaders for different municipalities and members of Panama's Legislative Assembly. On the 5th of May, voting stations will open at 7 o'clock in the morning and close at 4 in the afternoon local time. Results are expected to come in from around 6 in the afternoon. Main topics of the election campaign were the issues around water, health, education, and the economy, issues that all previous governments have failed to improve.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a few. Welcome back. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez has called on the international community to stand against U.S. economic sanctions imposed to the island. In April, the U.S. government announced that it will reactivate a part of the Helms-Burton Act. This allows U.S. citizens to sue individuals and companies from a third-party country who have invested in properties nationalized in Cuba following the revolution.
I urge the international community to stop the U.S.'s irrational and irresponsible actions and take measures as soon as possible before it's too late. I have to point out that Cuba will guarantee legal protection of foreign enterprises and fulfill all commitments on trade with other countries.
A Guyanese man who stabbed his 9-month pregnant Trinidadian wife to death at their home in Canada in 2017 has been sentenced to life in prison. In handing down this sentence, the judge told Nicholas Baig he has no chance of parole for the next 17 years. Baig had pled guilty to second-degree murder of Ariana Go-Birdhen earlier this year. Business and consumer confidence in Jamaica has reached record levels as it continues to implement an ambitious program of economic reforms. The country has suffered high debt and low growth over the last 30 years. During an official visit to the island, the vice president of the Latin America and Caribbean World Bank says he's impressed with Jamaica's macroeconomic achievements.
I have to tell you that it is extremely impressive what I see in terms of the achievements macroeconomically. I don't know any country, and I've worked on many countries, that has achieved over a sustained period of time the fiscal adjustment and reforms that Jamaica has done and produced a most spectacular reduction of its debt levels that reached almost 150% to fall this year below 100%. I can only congratulate the country for this. It is certainly a world achievement. Probably you would be number one in terms of that success.
In the Caribbean island of Tobago, the violent killing of a 69-year-old retiree and his wife has sparked widespread outrage. John Mills and his spouse, Yulin, were found dead in their Buko home. Their throats were slashed and they were found and bound and gagged. Prime Minister Keith Rowley took to social media to denounce the brutal slaying by saying, "What have we become? What are we producing as the next generation? John and I grew up together in poverty with pride, but violence and criminality were never part of our lives." British business magnate Richard Branson has shown interest in investing in the Antigua-based regional airline Liat. Antigua's cabinet made the revelation, saying discussions held with Branson involved turning Liat into a profitable enterprise. Branson also proposed investing several million, enlarging the fleet, and leasing several aircraft for routes outside of the Caribbean.
But in the short term...
Meanwhile, Antigua is continuing its discussions with Barbados to purchase the country's shares in Liat. Barbados' central bank governor says that if the airline goes under, it could deliver a blow to Caribbean tourism. The regional market is already grappling with the high cost of travel within the Caribbean. Arrivals from CARICOM visitors to Barbados are down by almost 5% so far this year. The government of Malawi has started relocating Cyclone Idai victims to higher ground. Working with development partners, the government says it hopes that this will also avoid future disasters. Shelter boxes and kits are being provided for the victims, while food and agriculture organizations have provided crop seeds. The World Health Organization says that 994 people have died from the ongoing Ebola epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The number is expected to hit 1,000 soon, amid fears of continued intense transmission of the virus. The organization plans to expand vaccination with the unlicensed new Ebola vaccine made by Johnson & Johnson, in addition to a Merck vaccine already being used. Security incidents continue to hamper the response to the outbreak.
As of 1st of May, we have 1,510 cases of Ebola virus disease in North Kivu and Ituri provinces of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which includes 994 deaths. Dr. Tedros and Dr. Moeti, our regional director, have recently returned from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where they found the situation on the ground to be worse than it has been previously.
14 new cases of cholera have been detected in Mozambique, in the province of Cabo Delgado, where Cyclone Kenneth recently hit. According to authorities, since last week, cases of diarrhea have been increasing, as currently 69 people have the disease. Authorities say that they are ready to tackle the situation. The government of South Sudan and opposition representatives have failed to reach an agreement for the formation of a government of national unity. This puts the peace deal that was signed last September into jeopardy. The government of national unity is supposed to be set up by May 12th. However, opposition delegates said that they will not sign any agreement until it guarantees the security of their leaders.
The arrangement must be completed before the formation of the Artigono, and that's the agreement said, Article 2.2.1, and also the number of states, because we must go into that government not to negotiate again, but to implement the agreement as it came.
We'll take a short break now. Stay with us. Welcome back. The United Nations has called on Israeli authorities to immediately halt the demolition of Palestinian-owned homes in East Jerusalem. UN Humanitarian Coordinator for Palestine, Jamie McGoldrick, expressed concern at the increase in the number of homes being demolished every month. More than 100 houses have been destroyed since January, leaving hundreds of families homeless. Israeli authorities frequently demolish Palestinian homes for allegedly being built without permits. 2 people have died after Cyclone Fani struck eastern India. Thousands more in the state of West Bengal have been given orders to flee. Electricity and water have also been cut for much of the city of 200,000 people. The cyclone is expected to barrel northeast towards Bangladesh on Saturday. Meanwhile, more than 220 trains were canceled by Indian Railways due to the powerful cyclone. Distraught passengers can be seen slipping on platforms awaiting further information on their trains. Some trains have even been chained to tracks to prevent them from rolling away under heavy winds.
We have been sitting here for hours since last night, but there is no train. We are not getting on any train. We are just sitting around and our money is gone. What do we do?
May 3rd marks World Press Freedom Day to commemorate the journalists who have lost their lives while in duty and in defense of the principles of press freedom. According to analysts, at least 250 journalists were jailed last year as Mexico was ranked as one of the deadliest countries for media workers. And countries like the United States, Brazil, and Hungary have significantly slipped down in the World Press Freedom Index rankings.
Well, a message to the UK government on Press Freedom Day is to think about every journalist and every publisher and every editor that is in prison at the moment. And that includes Julian Assange, who is sitting in Her Majesty's prison in Belfast.
On World Press Freedom Day, the UK government has declared its support for a free press. This despite the recent jailing of journalists and co-founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. Our correspondent, Pablo Navarrete, reports.
On the 11th of April, the Ecuadorian government withdrew the political asylum of WikiLeaks' founder, Julian Assange, who had been in its UK embassy since June 2012. Immediately after this, Assange was arrested by the British Secret Police and remains in custody in the Belmarsh High Security Prison in London. At present, British courts are processing an extradition request to the United States at the request of the Trump government.
What we've been told so far is that he will face a charge of conspiring with Chelsea Manning to leak US classified documents. But the truth is that that is just the first charge. And there is no doubt that once he is in the US, he will face much more serious charges.
Thank you for coming along to this. To coincide with World Press Freedom Day, this 3rd of May, UK Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt tweeted, "If we believe in media freedom as one of the fundamental bastions of a free society, then we need to stand up and talk about the dangers that journalists now face." Given the detention of Julian Assange by the British government, many are questioning the sincerity of such declarations.
They use the rhetoric of press freedom for when it's convenient against perceived enemies overseas, but when it actually comes to real issues of freedom of the press at home, the British government is completely and utterly on the side of the censors, and the detention of Julian Assange, the publisher of WikiLeaks, is a prime example of that.
Free speech, free Assange. This week, British courts began proceedings that will determine whether the UK will allow Julian Assange to be extradited to the US. One of Assange's key lawyers, Jennifer Robinson, has said that the outcome of the case could have grave consequences on the future of journalism. The new director of WikiLeaks, Kristin Hrafnsson, also had a message for the British government.
Well, a message to the UK government on Press Freedom Day is to think about every journalist and every publisher and every editor that is in prison at the moment. And that includes Julian Assange, who is sitting in Her Majesty's prison in Belfast.
Despite the British government's declarations on the importance of respecting the freedom of the press as a key pillar for a healthy democracy and international freedom of expression, its behaviour in the Assange case casts doubts on the credibility of its commitments to press freedom. Pablo Navarrete, Telesur, London.
We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thanks for watching.